And joining us now from Washington, Dr. Michael Toon of the American Cancer Society, Vice President of Epidemiology and Surveillance. Where does the American Cancer Society, Doctor, stand on this subject?
Well, I think the best way to look at this is we know that the type of radio frequency that comes from cell phones is very different from what comes from an X-ray or a nuclear bomb. And so we're really talking about a very different type of emission that is sort of halfway between an FM radio and a microwave. Secondly, we know that in the country that's used cell phones for the longest, which is Sweden, they came in the early 1980s, and the early cell phones had much higher emissions than today's cell phones. The brain cancer rates have been flat since the introduction of cell phones. That doesn't completely clear the story, but it is an important piece of information. Third, we know that the studies that have been done on brain cancer, and I'm going to distinguish brain cancer from acoustic neuroma, have largely been reassuring. And the studies that have found an association, some of them have found such a strong association that they really don't fit at all with the time course of brain cancer in the United States.
Can you break it down? Well, let's break it down a little. Do you think there's a link?
I think that what's still in question is the acoustic neuromas. I think that cell phones are not risk-free. I think that there are always surprises when you have a new technology and you have hundreds of millions of people using them. I think arrogance is the worst way to go. But I think now most of the people who actually do research on brain cancer causes are very skeptical that cell phones cause brain cancer.
Dr. Khurana, how would you respond?
I strongly disagree with Dr. Toon's perspective. Let me just read you something here, Larry. This is Professor Bruce Armstrong. He's professor and head of University of Sydney's School of Public Health. He is the head of the Interphone arm that is incorporating Australian research. He's the head of that. And he came on national television 2 weeks ago, and I'll quote you, "I think the evidence that is accumulating is pointing towards an effect of mobile phones on tumours. I would not want to be a heavy user of a mobile phone. People might be shocked to hear that the evidence does seem to be coming more strongly in support of harmful effects." He specifies glioma, that's primary brain tumour, cancer, acoustic neuroma, and parotid gland tumours. And I'd like to point you to the long-term data that's coming out of the Interphone studies. Okay, Sadetsky from Israel, the Israel arm of Interphone. This is what she says. "A positive dose-response trend was found. Our results suggest an association between cellular phone use and parotid gland tumours." Lakola from Finland, Interphone group. "For more than 10 years of mobile phone use reported on the side of the head where the tumour was located, an increased odds ratio of borderline statistical significance was found." And others have said the same thing. Now, beyond that, Larry, when Dr. Toon talks about no rise in the published incidence rates of tumours in Sweden, the strongest studies that are pointed towards links between cell phones and brain tumours have in fact come from Sweden. And while there hasn't been an increase in the rate of brain cancers overall, we have to also remember that they do take time before they're registered in local registries, and that data has to be correlated, and eventually that data will come through.
Are you more confused when you listen to the two doctors?
No, Larry, I'm not. I mean, it's not uncommon in science to have conflicting articles. A lot of studies may not be perfect. You know, each study may have some flaw to the study. My concern is that with the widespread use of cell phones, I think the worst scenario would be that we get the definitive study 10 years from now and we find out that there is a correlation.
One type of tumor often mentioned in the discussion of potential risk of cell phones is acoustic neuroma. Sanjay is over by our board. What is that?
Let me give you a picture here, Larry, to sort of show you this. This is an animation of the brain, sort of looking at it from the behind. As you can see there, going to spin that brain around and take you to a very specific part here. Here's the ear. Then we're going to go inside the ear here to the inner part over here, and that is right in here, that red part. That is a tumor that comes off one of the specific nerves in the inner ear. Let me show you what that looks like on an MRI scan. There you go, Larry. You can see it here. Just to orient you, the eyes are going to be up here. The ear is going to be over here. This big white mass that is what's known as an acoustic neuroma, a tumor of the specific nerve in that inner ear area.
Is that something that you would possibly associate with cell phones?
Well, some of the studies that we've been talking about so far this hour found in some of these European studies almost a 4 times increased likelihood of developing tumors like this one in people who are chronic cell phone users.
Thanks, Sanjay. Let's take a call. St. Louis, Missouri. Hello.
Oh, good evening, Larry, and good evening to your panel. I actually have 2 quick questions. If there's any studies showing that using cordless phones are harmful, and living by a cell phone tower, if that is harmful.
2 good questions. Cordless phones.
Well, there has been a study from Sweden where they've used cordless phones longer, and unfortunately, what they found was that there was a doubled risk of brain tumor with long use of cordless phones, and many cordless phones actually have as much radiation as a cell phone, if not more.
Cell phone tower?
That's something that's still in debate. There's a lot of investigation whether or not there might be an increase of lymphoma, but with people living next to cell phone towers, but still no good conclusive data exists.
I guess that's the issue, if I may say. The data that we're talking about here are human, sick people. And that's the challenge, and that's why Dr. Herbermann wrote the memo. That if we think there's a way to avoid future cancers by reducing a risk of something that may cause a lot of problems in the future, we ought to try to do that.
The Food and Drug Administration has made some recommendations about cell phone use. First, to use cell phones less often and to use landlines whenever possible. And the FDA also recommends keeping cell phones away from your head by using a speakerphone or using a headset or other connection to remote antenna. Sanjay, what does the manual say?
Well, it's interesting. Hardly anyone ever reads these safety manuals.
They come with the phone.
They come with the phone. If you read this very carefully, it says when carrying the device, not even when you're using it, when you're just carrying it and the device is on, you should be using a specific pre-approved holster that has been tested for compliance. So oftentimes these phones come with some sort of holster.
Use it.
They say use it. They say that makes it the most safe. And when you are actually using the phone, it should be kept at least 15 millimeters or up to an inch away from your ear. So I mean, the proper way to use a phone, Larry, would be to hold it like this.
So when they say keep it in the holster, that means keep it away from your body.
Keep it away from your body. Keep it away from your
So
breast.
wait a minute.
You know.
Somebody's scared.
Yeah, and this is from the manufacturer themselves.
I think the key thing here, Larry, is that we would assume as a society that cell phones are safe, that the government wouldn't allow us to use this device unless it was safe. The reality is it's a source of microwave radiation. There have been studies to suggest that there may be an associated risk of brain cancer and also a benign tumor of the ear, and there have been some studies to suggest eye tumors as well. The important thing, I think, for your listeners to hear is that they need to be cautious because we may not have the answer to this for another 10 years.